Hello everyone, welcome to Cloud Patashala's video series, where the mysteries of new age technologies are unlocked and real world secrets revealed. Empower your career in cloud and DevOps with our comprehensive online courses. You would learn the leading and on-demand technologies in various domains like AWS, Terraform, which is used for infrastructure as code, Ansible, used for configuration and management, Git and GitHub used for continuous integration, Jenkins used for continuous delivery, Docker used for containerization, and Kubernetes used for container orchestration. Today in this video, we will be looking at how we can create a Postgres database on the AWS cloud. So let's try to log in to the AWS console. I would search for the term RDS, which also stands for Relational Database Service, and go into it. So I am currently in the Mumbai region, and as you see that I don't have any databases running at the moment. I could click on the zero databases link over there, and this would give me an option on the right hand corner. I could click on create a database, and this would give me all the options that AWS has to offer us when it comes to creation of databases. I would be using the standard create option. We would be going with the PostgreSQL database, and I would be selecting Postgres version 13.7 as of now. Now, since this is not a production scale database, I would be selecting free tier so that the cost comes to the bare minimum when it comes to creation of the database. Availability and durability are the options that are disabled in free tier. I would be asked to create a database or provide a database name wherein I would say Cloud Patashala Postgres DB, and it will ask us to provide the credentials for the master user that Postgres uses. In this case, the master username that is being used is Postgres, and we would be logging with the same username time of connecting to the database. Next comes the database instance type. So I would be using the T3 micro as it falls into the free tier eligibility. The next comes storage. I would be selecting 20 GB of storage, which is the bare minimum that the Postgres database would need, and would be going further with the options. Now I am not going to connect to the database using an EC2 instance, so I would not be connecting with this option, but would be going with the default, which is don't connect to an EC2 compute resource. Now we are using IPv4 address spaces for most of our workloads, so I would be sticking with IPv4 address space. I would be selecting the VPC that I already have, so the VPC that I would be using is CPB14 VPC01. I would be selecting a database subnet group name. Now if you're wondering what a database subnet group name is, we could explore that over in a new tab. So I will be going into the RDS dashboard, and on the extreme left I would be getting something called as subnet groups in the second section of the list. Here, if you are initially logging in for the first time, you would only be having the default subnet group, whereas you would not be having the other subnet groups. You could click on create a DB subnet group, provide a name for this saying that CP demo Postgres, and also give a name or description for this. I would be selecting the VPC in which I want to create this, and the option that I would be selecting is the subnets that I would like to associate this with. Now I would be creating this database in a public subnet. For going into the public subnet, I have to select the public subnets that I have. Because from the subnet ID I am not able to understand or get the information which subnets are public, what I would be doing is going into my subnet section in the VPC and getting the CIDR ranges of my subnets. So the subnets would be 2.0 and 3.0. So I would be selecting subnet 2.0 and 3.0, which would act as the public subnets. Now that the subnet group has been created, I would come back and I could select either of the subnets. Now if you have just created the subnet group, you would again have to refresh the page and start creating the database again. That is, you would have to refresh the page. wherein you would be presented with the same options again, and you would have to then select the new subnet group that you just created. I would be selecting Postgres. I am going with the default version of Postgres engine that they have provided. I would be changing the name to CP demo DB1. I would be creating a password, so I would provide the password. I would then be going into the storage, which has automatically taken as 20 GB, remembering from the previous example that we had. Now you would see that I have both the subnet groups in my list. I would need a public access on the database, which is not a good option if you are trying to host public data on it. But if you're going with the defaults, it's always best to have that option enabled. I will be going with a default security group, a launch wizard one, which I have already provided over there. The availability zone in which I want to create the database, I would be creating the database in availability zone 1A. I would leave rest of the options as it is and would not be changing any of them. So as you see, our database is getting created, and we would have to wait for up to 5 to 15 minutes for the database to come into the available state. Now as you see, I could go into the monitoring section, and we would have to wait for the database connections to be established and for the CPU graph to start popping up. In the meantime, I could give you a very quick walkthrough of what configuration the database has been created with. So the database has been created in the VPC 01, that is CPV 1501. The subnets that the database is associated with is both the public subnets. The security group that I have is launch wizard 1, and the public accessibility for the website has been enabled. The next configuration part that you could see for the database is in the configuration tab, wherein you would get the engine version of the database. So we are currently running version 13.7 on this, so that is Postgres 13.7 being run on this database server. We have a Postgres license, and the parameter groups that we are using is default parameter group for Postgres 13. Rest of the options are not much of a consideration for us. This would give you the master username, though you would not be able to retrieve the password, though you have an option to change the master password once the database is ready. We currently are using a T3 micro for the instance class that would give us 2 CPUs and 1 GB of memory. So if you're wondering if a database would run with 1 GB of memory, here you are, a database running on 1 GB of memory. The storage that we have is encryption is enabled, and we have encrypted this with the KMS key that is provided by default. The storage that we have got is 19 GB, and we are waiting for all other options to be enabled as we speak. Once the database is up, we would be able to see the entry point details and the port number, which can be used to connect to the database from the outside world. For these two to pop up, we would have to wait for the database to come into the available mode. I just hit the refresh, and you would see that the CPU is already being used at 14.60%. The status of the database as of now is backing up. So what is happening in the background is AWS is creating a backup of the database as soon as this got created. Now here you would see that we have an entry point, so I can use this entry point to log into the database using a database connectivity client. The port number at which I have to connect is 5432. Let's quickly look and see if the name that we have is being resolved to an IP address, and as you see, this database is now resolvable on IP address 3.108.253.8. So this is an overall perception of how the database can be created in AWS using the relational database service. Similarly, using the RDS, we could also create Amazon Aurora, MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, and Oracle databases also. My favorite and most of the production environments that I have looked into uses PostgreSQL as its database for various reasons that you would come to know as we go deeper into the sections. In the next part of the video, we would be looking to see how we can connect to this database from a PostgreSQL client, and how we could create a table in the PostgreSQL, and how we could play around with the database. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked the video, please like and share it with your friends. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Keep having a great day.